Hello, Varlets. Today I can finally bring you the updated version of the Cinder Mage. I meant to release this video last week, but last week was just a really chaotic time for me. And while I was also doing the rehearsal for this video to check whether everything's in place, I realized that if I did it in its entirety like I did the Storm Witch, it would be a really long video. Which is why I decided to split away the Inferno stuff into its own review video. And if you want to learn more about the Inferno stuff, specifically about the Inferno stuff, then you can watch that video, which I will link in the description. For this video, we will focus entirely on the Cinder Mage as a whole rather than talking at length about the Inferno stuff on its own. So let's dive right in. This build is a dominantly crit build, so we're going to start with Metal and Perfect Timing. We will then pick up Quietude as our core means of regenerating toughness from peril. And from here, we will slide down to the right to pick up Assail, like we did in the original Cinder Mage video, and we'll take Quick Shards, but we are not going to take Ethereal Shards. I'll explain all the decisions as to why I'm doing certain things at the end because it's a lot more easier to explain once you get the whole picture. From here, we'll go down and take Malefic Momentum. Then, we will branch to the right, picking up Lightning Speed, Soul Drinker, and Warp Splitting. Because this is a crit build, we will take Prescience, and then we'll come down here and head straight into Telkine Shield via Empathetic Evasion. Now, the original Cinder Mage build branched down into Venting Shriek, and that build still works today. If you like the Venting Shriek route, you can use it. Personally, for me, I found the Telkine Shield path much more interesting to play from my point of view. If you like damage and like wiping out the whole screen full of Soul Blaze, by all means go down here. The build path doesn't really change that much. Now, Telkine Shield. The safe way to play this is to go through Telkine Dome and Sanctuary. This is never a bad combination of talents to pick up. It allows you to designate an area that is a place to rally for your teammates, and is a place that protects you from ranged enemies and gives you more of an edge against melee enemies in combat. If you want to have a more interesting time, right now, I know that Enervating Threshold is bugged because right now special enemies are only dealing 1 damage to the wall instead of 8. So this makes the wall significantly tankier than it's supposed to be, which also means the things you can do with Enervating Threshold and Bolstered Shield is completely box out specials from certain rooms, which is very fun to do because you can watch a Pox Burster keep trying again and again to get through your shield and it just won't, and it's just so funny. But this being bugged means my opinion of it might change if it's reverted, and honestly I wish the bug would stay or come as a buff because it being in this current state has left me with some thoughts, but that's for a different video. Anyway, for simplicity's sake, we'll just go the Telkine Dome and Sanctuary because this is always good. I've been using this for like Tree Veg, Auric Maelstrom, regular Damnation, never bad. From here, we will go down, we will take Solidity, and then we will branch to Penetration of the Soul. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not really like this talent. I think it's kind of a waste, but I don't really want to use Empiric Resolve because of the toughness penalty. While the 40% regeneration reduction is great for DPS output, because of the nature of this build, you tend to be on the front lines a lot, and so you tend to take chip damage from enemies that are left unchecked, especially if you're in a pub group. So I find that not penalizing myself with the toughness penalty is a lot better. So I take Penetration of the Soul simply because it's not giving me a negative. I would take something else. In fact, I'd rather take Anticipation if it was down here than I'd take Penetration of the Soul. And the reason why we're going down this path is because this is going to be a Warp Siphon build. We'll take Warp Siphon, Imperial Empowerment, we will take Infire Reborn because this is a Soul Blaze centric build, and Warp Battery. So all this will give us additional cooldowns to fuel our Telkine Dome as well as a bit more damage. With 3 more points, we take the Health Boost and Warp Rider because that's always good to have. Now, this leaves us with 1 more point, and I've been toying around with this 1 point for the longest while. Originally, in all iterations of the build, this 1 point would go into Perilous Combustion. This talent is very good, but also unnecessary to some extent. This talent is basically a a punishment for elites that gather together, because the Soul Blaze from this talent has no cap. It can reach the global cap. So if you, for example, kill a Rager with 15 stacks, and the Rager next to it has 15 stacks but is not dead, the Rager that dies first will apply 3 stacks to that surviving Rager, which will now have 18 stacks. And this can keep going up to 31 stacks. So if you kill, how many was it? Let's say 6 Ragers next to a Plague Ogryn, all of those Ragers that die next to it will apply, 18 Soul Blaze plus 15, 31 stacks, yeah. So the Plague Ogryn will have 31 stacks. So this is a really strong node on its own because it punishes enemies that group up together. But you could argue that the Inferno Staff already does that. Close quarters combat and enemies grouping up is exactly what the Inferno Staff is good at dealing with. So I wonder where this point should go. If in doubt, you can definitely put it back into Perilous Combustion. You could put it into Battle Meditation. This gives you more sustain for your Inferno Staff output, especially because you aren't using Empiric Resolve. You could also put it into the Crit Chance boost, because trading 1 talent point for 1 free perk, as it were, is also a pretty good deal. If you are not really confident in managing your peril, you can put that into Crystalline Build. That will give you a little bit of forgiveness in your gameplay. I've tried Inner Tranquility. It works fine to put this point right here. This gives you some of the benefit of more sustained damage without the penalty of toughness regeneration, which is fine. I don't think Essence Harvest is worth it because toughness gained from warp charges isn't as effective, and if you wanted more toughness, you might as well just use Soul Stealer, because that's just outright toughness instead of hoping for warp charges. So this is a free point you can use. You can, of course, put it into Ethereal Shards if you want. I'm just going to stick it back into Perilous Combustion because that's where I left it the last time. So, with all the points in place, let's talk about why I chose the talents as they are. Starting with why no Ethereal Shards. A sales function in this build is medium to long range, ranged enemy problem solving. So snipers, shooters that are firing at you from 30 meters away and way out of your Inferno Staff range, groups of shotgunners that congregate together. That is when spamming a sail into a group and killing like a handful of them, which triggers Perilous Combustion, would be very effective. But a sail is more of a reactive tool more than an active one. So having it ready to go is always good, but needing it to pierce a bunch more enemies, not entirely necessary. This is especially the case because warp splitting still applies to a sail. So even if you have high peril and you don't have Ethereal Shards, you can still pierce up to 5 stalkers or shooters with warp splitting. And that is already effective enough. And we want warp splitting because this just benefits a sail, but warp splitting benefits a sail and your melee. So you're getting much more benefit for a point-by-point basis with warp splitting here. For Soul Drinker, why I chose Soul Drinker over Soul Stealer is because this is a crit-centric build. So Soul Drinker provided a 1-2 punch of both toughness regeneration as well as increasing our crit chance, rather than just only having toughness regeneration from Soul Stealer. We were going to be killing most of the things with our Inferno Staff anyway, so they're going to die from Soul Blaze, whereas this is more general, but again, our main source of killing is going to be from our Inferno Staff, so this would just be a much better use of that 1 point. What else is here? No, I think that was it. I think those are the key changes that I've made to the Cinder Mage build from the last one. This one is going to be much more crit-centric, so our damage output is actually going to be really, really powerful. We can, with a little bit of RNG, 1 full charge down Maulers with this build. But that would depend on how you build your Inferno Staff, which is what we'll talk about next. So this is going to be the weapon selection. Our melee weapon is going to be the Deimos 4 Sword. And of course the Inferno Staff is going to be our range weapon of choice. These weapon choices have not changed from the original Cinder Mage build. I've played obviously with the dueling sword, I've tried different weapons, combat knife, but I just really, really love the Deimos sword. It's one of the most interesting weapons in the game, and whenever I play something that's very simple like the dueling sword, I feel a little bit sad that I don't get to do as many things as I can with the Deimos. But we'll get into that in a bit. So, building the Deimos has changed a little bit from my last build. I've also tested different ways to build it and seeing how better to improve its performance. But it all comes down to understanding what is the point of the sword. Because like I mentioned earlier, many of your kills are going to come from either a sail for ranged enemies or outright just burning them to death with your Inferno staff. The Deimos is there for really two reasons. Number one, crushers. The Deimos can handle crushers on its own, no problem. And mutants. Mutants, if you're lucky, you can just one-shot them to the face. And apart from dealing with small melee enemies getting in the way, the Deimos is really in your back pocket as a counter weapon, more so than an active one. And so I find that as a force sword, it is probably more useful for it to be a defensive weapon rather than an active weapon for combat. That's in my opinion. I like using it this way. So for that reason, I have Carapace damage as my perk because this is designed to take on crushers. I have stamina, which is going to raise some eyebrows, and I'm sure some of the more meta people will be wondering why I'm wasting a perk slot for stamina. Which again, I'm using this because it helps me sprint faster, for longer, and it's a defensive weapon because I do not have kinetic deflection. Deflector really helps you in repositioning yourself out of really, really poor situations, and sometimes it's not through fault of your own because I've opened doors and have like 12 shotgunners just appear out from nowhere, and I needed to reposition myself as fast as I could. Deflector ensured that I didn't take any chip damage whatsoever, and that I could buy enough time for my dodge efficiency to recharge while still absorbing shots. So the difference between no deflector and deflector is night and day when it comes to your defensive capabilities. I of course have played with Slaughterer here, trying to use the Deimos Force Sword as a active melee weapon to kill things, but the loss of deflector was very, very noticeable in my experience. The other blessing that hasn't changed since the original build is Uncanny Strike. And Uncanny Strike is just incredible with the Deimos Force Sword. I would die on the hill that Uncanny is an anchor blessing for the Force Sword and no one else can tell me otherwise. Because it just works so perfectly well with how this sword functions. And I'll show the newer players on how and why it works. But of course, you can watch the original Cinder Mage video and I also explained it there. Now, for stats, I don't have a perfect one. I think I'm still using the original one from my original Cinder Mage build. But the dump stat is Warp Resistance. Everything else here can be 80 except Warp Resistance, simply because you won't be really using your special attack that much at all. You only will use it to stun maybe one enemy to stop them from attacking a teammate, but you have better options to do that. Now, for the Inferno Staff. The Inferno Staff, this is the one I showcased in my review video. The dump stat is going to be Warp Resistance, in my opinion, although there was some discussion in that comment section about Quell Speed. Honestly, it's up to you. I've played with both, and a little bit more Warp Resistance helps a little bit, but more Quell Speed wasn't that noticeable either, so in my opinion, it doesn't really matter that much. I just go with Warp Resistance. You can go for Quell Speed if you want it as your dump stat. Just make sure that the rest of these are all 80 and that burn is at least 76, I believe. Let me just check. Inspect. Burn, yes. So you see that max damage over time stacks. You want that to be 15. Because at, I think, below 76, it's 14, and that affects the maximum damage you can output with the Inferno Staff. Watch the review video if you want to learn more. So, for our perks, we are going to go with Flak Damage, because we want to maximize the output of our Soul Blaze. And the tankiest non-boss enemy or monster that isn't a Crusher, because that's Carapace, and you can't do anything to Carapace anyway, naturally, is a Mauler. And a Mauler takes Flak Damage when you set it on fire. This is why we want Flak Damage here. We want increased critical strike chance, because that will help us ramp up our Soul Blaze application much faster. If you didn't know, scoring critical hits on the Inferno Force Staff and the Zealot's Flamethrower by extension applies 2 stacks instead of 1. So you're literally doubling the speed at which you can apply the damage over time. On that note, for critical, we are going with Warp Nexus as well, for the same reason I just mentioned. I have played with Penetrating Flame. In fact, the last 4 games or so, I was playing with Penetrating Flame, and my Zealot ally found it very useful when I was faced with 8 Crushers and he was behind them trying to take them out. The brittleness applied really helped him with his damage and helped save me from getting squished by a whole bunch of Crushers. The other blessing that I think really no one's going to argue with is Blaze Away. It's just so strong. It just adds 40% strength within 1 second of usage. And that helps you with your stagger, it helps with your direct damage, it helps with your damage over time. absolutely take place away. So, like I said, I won't be talking too much about the Inferno 4 stuff because I've covered that in the review video already. For Curios, I've gone with basically the same thing here for everything. I've gone for 2 toughness, 1 health, and on every single one of them, I have additional toughness, I have stamina regeneration, and combat ability regeneration. Ordinarily, I wouldn't put too much weight into combat ability regeneration, but because we don't have Psykinetics Aura, which is quite a loss in terms of uptime for your abilities, making do with the additional combat ability regeneration from your perks will suffice in this case. So that is the new and updated Cinder Mage. Some tips. As you can see, I've been practicing a little bit with dealing with crushes. So I think the first thing I should show you is dealing with crushes. Right now, I'm using both the force push and the heavy attack of the Deimos to knock them down. Because I can CC them so easily, I'm not really afraid of them. Oh, that's a hit. Now, I'm not fighting optimally here. I'm just trying to show you that with the Deimos, you don't have to be afraid of crushes at all. Because you have so much crowd control built in. And I'm just going to turn on invisibility so I can show you what it looks like. So the first one, like you saw, was the heavy thrust. That is the second heavy attack of the chain, and that allows you to knock down crushers if you aim for the head. The next crowd control is obviously going to be the special attack. This just stuns them in place and allows you to break them out of their attack chain. The last one is the force push, which is the push attack. And so for this, I'm just going to release him. So if you push attack and aim for the face, you can knock them out of their overhead, which is incredibly powerful. See? And what's more is that if you chain this into a heavy... Oops, hold on. You can chain the force push into the heavy, which allows you to kill them very easily. One of the combos that I like to do is just force push into heavy, and then just light one and chain back into heavy. So, just for simplicity's sake, the normal combo you can do is stab once, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy. So this will keep chaining the heavy 2, which is the strongest attack. You can also, for more maneuverability, push and then dodge to the side. So dodging to the side will push you towards the crusher, and then re-angle yourself to poke it in the face. So that also works. Another combo, and this one is just more for finesse, it's not the most practical combo, is the triple stab, which is light with the special attack, light 1, heavy 2. That combo usually will one-shot a crusher. Well, not one-shot, full combo a crusher down if you have enough warp charges. Demonstrate again. The benefit of that combo is that each tick of the Deimos' charge attack, which does multiple ticks, procs Uncanny Strike. So right now I have 0 stacks. If I hit him in the face once, I have 4 stacks, which is 100 and... no, is it 100? 96% rending. In other words, the Crusher basically has no more armor or damage resistance against my attacks. So that is incredibly strong, in my opinion, and is one of the proudest things I've done in terms of like build crafting when I made the original Cinder Mage video. So, speaking of that, those who are keen of eye would have noticed that the force push heals a weak spot hit. And if you looked at my UI, which I'll try and zoom here, you can see that just with my force push, I'm building up Uncanny Strikes. Even when I'm not even looking at the Crusher directly, I'm still refreshing it. So this, in the original video, I showed you how you could take advantage of that. So normally, Soul Blaze just doesn't do anything to a Crusher. Static damage. But if you swap to Uncanny and start pushing them around, look at the damage over time. It starts to become quite meaningful. And in the original Cinder Mage video, I showed you how you could use, together with Venting Shriek, burn down 8 Crushers with very little difficulty. So this is why I really love the Deimos sword, and even though the Dueling Sword also has Uncanny Strike, you don't have a 9 meter, is it 9 meters? You don't have a 9 meter force push. That's a 9 meter stagger, hard stagger that can knock Crushers out of their overhead. The last thing, which I think you will find helpful, and I'm pretty sure most veteran Psykers do this already, is using your slide as a mobility tool while you are either quelling or channeling. You can slide and move. It takes up a lot of your dodge efficiency, but it provides you mobility which you otherwise might not have. And this comes up a lot. I'll show some gameplay here while I'm talking so you can see it in actual games. Being able to move while either channeling or quelling buys you a lot of time when it comes to creating space for yourself, as well as distancing yourself away from enemies that are a threat, like crushers for example. This is something you will learn the more you play, and is applicable for pretty much all 4 staffs. Ah, yes, and a final demonstration to show you the power of why I've built the 4 staff this way. Let's bring up a bunch of executors, or maulers rather. So right now I have nothing, no buffs, no warp charges or anything. And a full charge and a little bit of ticks should bring down the maulers, no problem. Unlucky with the crits. But if I stack up a whole bunch more, now that I have 6 warp charges, which makes a world of difference. And I'm lucky with the crits. You can see they all pretty much just burn to death in 1 full charge. So that's why we go with Flak, because even without Flak, as long as you have some warp charges, something like Direct Rages really aren't a problem. Can I spawn them here? Here we are. They will probably die before 1 full charge is even over. Yep, long before. So this is why you do not need Maniac, because you can already kill Rages way before your charge is over. So that's the reason for that perk choice. So that is it. That is the updated version for the Cinder Mage. I have been having a lot of fun with this build, and I really wish that this Innovating Threshold bug stays, because it honestly added so much more mechanical interest into this build. And the reason why I'm not using it here is because it's bugged. So I don't want this video to be outdated simply because I recommended a bugged talent that is no longer relevant in the future. But we'll keep an eye on that. And I'll probably release a video talking about the Psyker's talents as a whole, what's good, what could be improved, and what needs to change. So yeah, that is the video for the Cinder Mage. I hope you found the build useful. I certainly have found it very fun. Let me know what you think. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.